In this video, we're going to create the first HyperSub on-chain subscription on Base Sepolia. The problem that we're facing is that HyperSub subscriptions are currently not deployed on Base Sepolia. However, FAM is based, and so for some new features that we're rolling out, we need HyperSub to be deployed on Base Sepolia. The solution that we're going to be building is to deploy HyperSub, which they have open source factory contracts. We're going to deploy those onto Base Sepolia. I have done very little research before this, so the first thing I'm going to do is search GitHub HyperSub. Now we're on their GitHub. Protocol SDKs, contracts. If we drill into contracts, Fabric smart contracts, you can find the documentation here. Okay, so it seems like all of their smart contracts are contained within this mono repo, in which case, let's take a quick dive before we clone it, but I think we've now found subscriptions, and here's the factory. The factory is what we want to deploy. Our goal is to create the first HyperSub on Base Sepolia. If you want to create it, you need the factory. We found the repo. We're going to clone the repo locally. We're going to deploy using a deploy script to deploy it onto Base Sepolia. And then we're going to use ThirdWeb to visit the HyperSub factory that we'll deploy to deploy the first HyperSub. Step one, clone it all locally. Let's go back to code, click code, copy the SSH, and now we open up a terminal. From here we get into our projects. This is going to be for FAM. So we should already have this actually. Maybe we don't. Git clone. Well, it's just going to name it contracts. I don't want to just name it contracts. So let's call it HyperSub. So we'll make a directory called HyperSub. We'll cd into HyperSub, and then we'll git clone contracts. This will clone in the contracts folder, and that will accomplish step number 1. And we'll verify it by running forge test. So from here, we cd into contracts, and now we'll open up Cursor. If you're not familiar with Cursor, this is a key tool in my tool belt recently. It is an IDE, so just a development environment. It's forked from VS Code, so VS Code's what every dev was using. Everybody on my team was using VS Code before. We've now started to use Cursor because Cursor is an AI IDE. So you can directly plug in this code, and then you can ask it things like, tell me about this code base. How can I run the tests? And then if I do this command enter, it'll search in the global code base. And so right now it's looking through the entire code base, and it's going to tell me about what I just cloned, and it's going to tell me how I can run the tests. So this is a great way to get an understanding of what's going on in the code base. It makes my job easier, as well as opens up the door for other base builders who might not necessarily have the experience or the education, but want to be building these applications. You have an assistant that is built into your code editor, and it's giving you the exact thing that I was going to run. I was going to run forge test. It actually even told me to run forge test V, and when I click on it, it takes me to where it is in the README so I can learn more. And so I can copy this, I can open up my terminal, and from here I can run that command. It looks like there's even a setup that we're supposed to do to install. I'm going to just try skipping that because this is what I would do if I didn't see the README, is I would just run this. It looks like it's automatically installing a whole bunch of packages, a whole bunch of other libraries, just like we would expect. While it's installing those, let's see if we can find a deploy script. I don't see, the README is pretty basic, but it includes the exact thing I wanted to do, which is testing. From there, they have a script for setup, audit, and a demo, a deployer. I'm not seeing anything that seems like it's gonna help. Deployed ETH campaign. What is setup? I'm not seeing anything that's going to help me deploy this. So I think my best option if I want a deploy script is going to be to write my own deploy script So it seems like we're now compiling. While it's compiling, we're going to let it do its thing. We're going to go back over to a terminal. I already have another repo where I've done some deployments. The most recent one is the FAM authority. Let's keep it inside of the same project. We go out one more directory. From here, we cd into authority, and we open up another cursor session with authority. And this one, all that we need is one little script file. Let's make sure we close everything. And we go into the script for deploy, and we're just going to copy this script altogether. Inside of our script folder, we'll paste it. And then I'm going to update the README just to make it easy for myself. I'm going to copy the deploy script. I will commit this change. Let's see if we can end up getting this change into a pull request and try to contribute this change back to HyperSub. That could be a good full circle moment. Let's see if we can get there. So step one, clone the repo locally. We've cloned the repo locally since I've been yapping and we've been doing stuff. We got 176 tests passed. We can see that we've got HyperSub locally. To zoom in on where we're trying to get to, we want the factory contract deployed, so we can go into subscriptions, find the factory. This is what I would like to deploy. Let's see if there's any examples. Let's just go there. So that's our next step. And so I'm just going to use Cursor to do that. To make it a little bit more formal, like how I would usually do it if I wasn't recording myself, I would make a new file called requirements.md. And inside of here, I'm going to say hashtag instructions. Yeah, it's actually instructions instead of requirements. Not that it matters. Instructions 1, so what we want to do is create a deploy script in the script directory. 2, and what do we want it to be called? Called directory for deploying the subscription factory. I'm going to be a little bit generic, and then we'll say number 2, create a script, follow the pattern in the deployment script for the FAM authority. And so I haven't had to write any code yet. Let's go ahead and highlight the line, and then you do Command L to add it to your chat. And then you say, please implement only step 1. Create the script file in @script and use @deploy as your example, or no, as your reference. If I wanted to do a global code base search, I can. I have found sometimes that when I know the files I want it to have context of, it gives me great results if I give it these specific files so that we don't overwhelm it with too much info. Just like a human, if you give it too much info, it might read past the important info because it has too many things at its disposal. And so now it's creating this new file that does not exist to deploy subscription. I wanted to also tag in the factory. So I'm going to rewrite, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to go back here to deploy the @subscription token factory contract. I'm going to give it the specific contract I want it to deploy just to make sure that it focuses. It might have already given me the correct answer, but I'm going to just make it explicit just so that we don't, you measure twice and cut once. I found you get the best results. We'll create a new file in here called deploy subscription factory, deploy subscription factory.t.sol. If you're curious where I got that name, I copied it right from the AI's instructions. Now we can click on here. Oh, it's .s.sol, not .t.sol. That's my error. We rename it to .s.sol. Click on it again. It opens up the file. You click apply. It fills in the contents of my file for me. We click save. So let's read through what it gave us. We've got deploy subscription factory as a script. We start a broadcast. We get the V1 token, and then we deploy the factory, and I guess it needs one parameter called that. And then we'll log out what everything's been deployed at, and then we'll stop broadcasting. This all sounds good. Let's update the README to call that deploy script. So let's add that to our instructions. I could just go straight into typing it into the chat, but I find sometimes that crafting it here first, again, taking a little bit more time to craft what your vision is, where you want to go, helps the AI not to hallucinate, helps you to reinforce the destination you want to go to, and overall progresses the project in a very linear and concrete fashion. So let's update README deploy script to deploy the new deploy script for subscription factory. Again, my English is not even correct in here. These are not like real sentences altogether, but they make it work, and they make it so that I don't really need to code that much, and I can focus on the direction and yap in here on these videos. So now I can say, please implement only step 2. Update at README, deploy script using the script at deploy subscription factory. Dookie. Prints out the results. Click file name, it opens the file for you. You click apply, it gives you the diff. Nice, it cleans it up a little bit more. This isn't a FAM authority. This is a subscription factory. Oh, nice. It gave both of them to specify it. Cool, so now we've got one to deploy the FAM authority, which isn't in this, so we'll delete that. But then we've got the subscription factory. Use the following command, forge script. Now we can, let's delete that factory contract because it's not gonna work. Let's try running the test again just to see if there's any compilation errors. Everything's looking good. We're looking great. Okay, so let's copy it and see if we can make it happen. Now I'm gonna need to use my private key here, so I think from this point I'm probably gonna need to be careful about what I leave in and what I clip. Okay, we've got 2 transactions in progress. It looks like it's deploying it. I don't think I've had to write a single line of code, and we're getting we've written a script, we're deploying the script, we're deploying HyperSub onto Base Sepolia for the first time. HyperSub is now based. Contracts are getting verified. This is a special moment. Let's go and find these contracts. So we've got a token, and now we're doing the factory. Let's look this up and see if we've got some verified contracts. So let's go over to Sepolia base scan, and from here, paste in the address. I think I got an extra character in what I copied. There's a period at the end for some reason. Here's our contract. 46 seconds ago it was deployed. Subscription token, V1, the HyperSub contracts are now live on Base Sepolia. The second half of that is the factory, which should be right here. If we take the factory, paste the factory in. Over here we've got a minute ago. Subscription token factory V1. So we have now, step 1, clone the HyperSub contracts locally, did that. Step 2, deploy script for Base Sepolia so that way we can deploy the HyperSub contracts. We've now written that, and let's open up a PR real quick and give the HyperSub team these changes. So let's get status. It's gonna tell me that I don't have permission, but let's just go ahead and get checkout -b suites / Base Sepolia deployments. Let's make sure we spell it right. Git add, we want to add the README, and we want to add the script at least. Git commit -mi add a deploy script with instructions in the README for easy deployment on any chain. Because you just plug in whatever RPC URL you want. And so then we get status again. Let's see what's inside a broadcast. ls broadcast. What's inside of this file? Yeah, let's go ahead and add it. Git add broadcast, so that way they have, I think we want to add broadcast. Let's make sure that there's nothing. I think we only want to add latest. That's the only run, deploy, and then we've got 84532 the chain, and then we just want, I just want run latest, personally. Git commit -m, I add latest deployment info for Base Sepolia Testnet. Okay, now we want to push our changes, and this is where we're going to get our first feedback. Sweets. It's going to tell me that we don't have permission to push. And so in this moment, what we do is we fork it. I believe I already have a fork of this. Let's see if I do. Oh, I don't. There's 0 forks. Nobody has forked this. That is funny. 0 people have forked these contracts. This is not only the first time that these contracts have been deployed onto Base Sepolia, this is also the first time that the HyperSub contracts have been forked. So let's fork it. That's hilarious. There are not many base builders out there. If you're based, you are few. Okay, so now we can push up to this by clicking the code button. We copy this URL, and now we get status, git remote add sweetman, paste the URL, git push sweetman sweets Base Sepolia deployment. I obviously have permission to push to my own repo, so when we push there, we want to open up a pull request. We'll open up a pull request with, we'll keep this in my own branch for now, and we'll merge it to my own main, and then we'll merge from my main over to their original repo. So let's verify that this only has the changes that I want. This also gives me a step to verify that I'm not committing any sort of public keys, or I'm sorry, private keys to deploy the subscription factory contract. Boop to boop, 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 all looking great. Latest deployment info is going to have the contract and all the parameters ran. So people want the hash or the contract address, you can just take this and throw it in again inside of Base Sepolia, and you can see the transaction where this happened and when the contracts were created in them. Let's go back to the pull request, and then here's our deploy script. Everything looked great to me, so I'll merge this for my own purposes. And now from here we make the important bridge from my planet over to planet HyperSub, is we just say from my main to their main. Let's create a pull request, Base Sepolia, hashtag Base Sepolia support. It includes deploy script, readme updates for deploy script usage. What else? Broadcast directory containing latest deployment info on Base Sepolia Testnet. Create the pull request. We've now got a pull request. We are the first pull request going in. We'll just let that hang. We won't even post about it, just kind of do it and then leave it. So our next step, we have done step 1, we cloned it locally. Step 2, we created the deploy script. Step 3, we even gave them the deploy script if they want it. Step actual 3, create the first HyperSub on Base Sepolia. So now that we have deployed it on Base Sepolia, let's use the info we've got to go back to the contract that we want. Now we're going to use Third Web. Third Web is a set of awesome tools for base builders where you can, I use Third Web to interact with the contracts on chain. So we don't want the token, we want the factory, which is right here. We take this, we can go over to Third Web, and the path naming is Third Web and then chain name, contract address, and then you can leave Explorer or you can delete it, it's not important. And So we are going to be using Base Sepolia. Testnet is their naming convention. We paste the factory contract address, and now we should be able to see the factory and start using the factory. I'm seeing it. It's got our name because we've already verified it. We can go over to the Explorer, and from here we can write and we can deploy a subscription. Let's see if we can. Based subscription, symbol will be FAM, contract URI, we're just going to make it IPFS://, copy that, same for the token URI. Tokens per second, I don't know what to use for this. We'll do 1, minimum purchase seconds, I don't know, 1, reward BPS, let's go 500, ERC token address, let's go 0 address, 0 address, dookie, we copy the 0 address, hopefully that's Ethereum. Fee config ID, I don't know what that is, let's make it 1, keep the token value at 0, execute, fingers crossed. We have a transaction opening. So we can create an example subscription on Base Sepolia. And now we have, I think, just done it. So if we come into this transaction, we can see in internal transactions, we just created a new contract, and this should be a subscription. And so we now have a subscription. This is the first subscription created on Base Sepolia on the HyperSub contract system. And so we've done step 1, we cloned it locally. Step 2, we created a deploy script. Step 3, we created the first HyperSub on Base Sepolia. We can do one last thing if we really want, and we can actually grant the subscription. And so this is my, I believe this is my subscription contract. This should have been like a minute ago, yep. So we go into internal transactions, we go to this contract address, we copy this. Now let's go over to my HyperSub and let's give me the subscription. Let's verify that I don't have the subscription. Step 2, let's give me a subscription. And step 3, let's verify that I do have that subscription. So we'll copy, is this the address that I used? Maybe I used this. So let's read balance of, this is how you determine if someone has a subscription. And you can see 0, I do not. Do they have a, I think that's how they do subscription, is you just use the balance of. I don't think there's another method for it. So we check and it's 0. Now we'll go over to the right method and we will grant time. And let's grant just one account. Will give me 9 nines. And it looks like it wants these in quotes. Let's execute. And so we execute, grant the time, read the balance of, see that I now have my balance that is slowly ticking down, which means that I am now subscribed. So I've been able to give myself a subscription on the first Base Sepolia subscription contract on HyperSub. And so this is getting us one step closer to being able to link party contracts on Base to HyperSub contracts on Base, so that you can create a subscription for your community, and then if you subscribe to that subscription, you automatically get access to the party where you can vote on proposals for the community. We got it all working. This was a successful Base build. Links to all of the resources will be in the description below. If you found this helpful, please mint the video on Zora or subscribe on YouTube or whatever the other button clicks are. Thank you very much.